home. I thought they were finally retiring to travel. But then my mother casually dropped a line that made my blood run cold. "We're moving into your beach house tomorrow. Your dad said it's fine, and if you don't like it, you can find somewhere else." I had just quit my exhausting corporate job and poured every cent of my life savings into this oceanfront property to heal. Now, they were trying to evict me from my own sanctuary, treating me like an ungrateful tenant in a home my hard work paid for. My hands shook with rage, but as I looked out at the waves, a cold smile spread across my face. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. Instead, I quietly hung up the phone and prepared a welcome they will never forget. "My name is Maya. I am 28 years old, and just a few months ago, I was a senior financial analyst drowning in 80-hour work weeks, stress-induced migraines, and a complete lack of joy. I realized life was passing me by, so I did something terrifying. I quit my job, packed up my life, and poured every single cent of my hard-earned savings into buying my absolute dream beach house. This place was supposed to be my sanctuary, a coastal haven where I could finally breathe, slow down, and heal from years of corporate burnout. The ocean breeze was sweet, and the sound of the crashing waves felt like a personal reassurance that I had made the right choice. But my peace was completely shattered on my very first night in the house. I was sitting on the porch when my phone rang. It was my mother. Before I could even say hello, she launched into an announcement that left me absolutely stunned. She and my father had quietly sold their suburban home and were officially claiming my brand new beach house as their own retirement nest. I want to pause here because I'm incredibly curious about the amazing community watching this right now. Please take a quick moment to drop. I absolutely love seeing just how far my story has reached across the world. Now, as I sat frozen in a state of absolute shock, my mother's voice pulled me right back to a harsh reality I wasn't prepared for. To truly understand how my parents could casually decide to seize my home, you have to understand the toxic dynamic I grew up with. For as long as I can remember, my parents operated on a strict double standard, and it always favored my older brother, Julian. Julian was the golden child who could do no wrong, despite a lifetime of terrible decisions. Every time he failed a college course, crashed a car, or ran up thousands of dollars in credit card debt, my parents immediately swooped in to bail him out, draining their own savings to keep him afloat. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the invisible, low-maintenance daughter. When I graduated at the top of my class and secured my high-paying corporate job through sheer grit, there were no celebrations, no praise. They just viewed my success as a financial safety net for the family. My parents spent decades treating my hard work as a collective resource, while giving all their warmth and affection to Julian. They expected me to constantly sacrifice my own happiness and stability to fix the messes they all made together. They honestly believed that because they gave birth to me, they had an automatic right to everything I built. As I sat in the quiet of my new living room, listening to the echo of my mother's arrogant demands, decades of suppressed resentment finally hardened into absolute clarity. I realized that if I didn't stand up to their toxic entitlement right now, they would happily consume my entire life. The morning after that devastating phone call, the true scale of their audacity became undeniably clear. My phone lit up with a relentless barrage of text messages from my mother, and she wasn't asking for permission. She was issuing decrees. She laid out a list of strict house rules that she expected me to follow in my own home. She demanded that I clear out the master bedroom immediately so she and my father could settle in comfortably. To make matters worse, she casually added that I should pack up my personal belongings and move everything down into the small, damp basement. If I found that arrangement unacceptable, she told me I was perfectly free to pack my bags and find somewhere else to live. My hands shook with absolute rage as I read the words on the screen, but instead of panicking or giving in to the familiar family guilt, I took a deep breath and forced myself to think like the financial analyst I used to be. I went straight to my filing cabinet, pulled out the official property deed, and scheduled an emergency consultation with a trusted real estate attorney. My lawyer reviewed the documents and gave me a massive reality check that changed everything. He confirmed that since the beach house was purchased entirely with my own independent funds and registered exclusively under my name, My parents had absolutely zero legal rights to the property. They couldn't evict me, they couldn't force a sale, and they couldn't step foot inside without my explicit permission. That was the exact moment I decided to stop playing the victim. I chose to fake total compliance, letting them believe their manipulative plan was working perfectly while I quietly set a trap. With the legal facts firmly on my side, I spent the entire evening meticulously preparing for their arrival. If my parents wanted to treat my hard-earned sanctuary like a corporate asset they could just seize, then I was going to treat them like strict business clients. I sat down at my computer and drafted an airtight, completely professional lease agreement. I researched the highest possible market rent rates for oceanfront properties in the area, doubled it, and set that as their monthly obligation. I added clauses requiring a massive, upfront security deposit, mandatory renter's insurance, and severe financial penalties for any unauthorized alterations or property damage. Next, I went to work on the house itself to secure my personal space. I called a local technician who arrived within hours to install a high-end smart security system. We placed visible cameras at every entrance and digital keypad locks on the doors of the main master suite, which I intended to keep entirely for myself. My parents expected to walk into a defenseless household where they could dictate terms, but I was transforming it into a high-security fortress. By midnight, the trap was fully set. I printed out 2 copies of the brutal lease agreement, grabbed a fresh pen, and placed them right in the center of the kitchen counter. It was the exact spot they would have to pass the moment they walked through the front door. As I finally went to bed, listening to the soothing waves outside, I didn't feel an ounce of fear anymore. I just felt a cold, calm anticipation for the grand performance that was about to unfold the very next morning. The next morning at exactly 10 o'clock, a massive yellow moving truck rumbled into my driveway, followed closely by my parents' sedan. I stood by the window, watching them step out of their car with an unbearable air of triumph. My mother didn't even bother to knock. She burst through the front door, her eyes scanning the foyer as if she were a queen inspecting her new kingdom. My father strode in right behind her, completely ignoring me as he began directing the moving crew on where to place their heavy oak furniture. "Maya, don't just stand there," my mother commanded sharply, gesturing toward a stack of suitcases outside. "Start carrying these bags up to the master bedroom and make sure the movers don't scuff our walls." I didn't move an inch. I just smiled, walked over to the kitchen counter, and picked up the thick manila folder. "Before anyone unloads a single box," I said, my voice cutting through the noise with absolute composure, "we need to finalize the paperwork." My mother laughed, a dismissive sound that echoed through the high ceilings. "What paperwork? Don't be ridiculous, Maya. We're your parents." I calmly handed her the comprehensive corporate lease agreement. She snatched it from my hand, her eyes scanning down the page until they hit the highlighted sections showing the astronomical monthly rent and the massive upfront security deposit. I watched the arrogant entitlement instantly shatter from her face. She went completely rigid, her skin turning a sickly shade of pale as she stared at the binding contract. She turned to my father, her voice trembling as she gasped, "Edward, look at this. She's trying to make us pay." Rage erupted in the foyer the moment my father snatched the papers from my mother's shaking hands. "What is the meaning of this, Maya?" he roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of crimson. "We are your parents. We raised you, we fed you, and now you have the audacity to treat us like strangers? This is a complete betrayal of our family values." My mother chimed in, her voice screeching with synthetic tears as she tried to weaponize the ultimate family guilt trip. "After everything we've done for you, you're going to evict your own flesh and blood? You are a cold, heartless, ungrateful child." I stood perfectly still, letting their desperate anger wash over me without flinching. The old Maya would have broken down and apologized, but the woman standing before them now was entirely different. I looked my mother dead in the eye and threw her very own cruel words right back at her face, referencing the exact threat she had made just 24 hours ago. "If you don't like it, you can find somewhere else." The absolute shock that crossed their faces was priceless. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and checked the time. "I am giving you exactly 10 minutes, I said, my voice dripping with cold, unyielding authority. You will either sign that lease right now and transfer the security deposit, or you will instruct these movers to put your things back in that truck and get off my property. If you are still standing here in 10 minutes, I am calling the sheriff to have you arrested for criminal trespassing." The heavy silence that followed my ultimatum was broken only by the sound of the ocean waves crashing outside. My father stared at me, searching my eyes for any sign of hesitation, but he found absolutely none. Realizing their manipulation had failed, he slammed the unsigned lease onto the counter, grabbed my mother's arm, and ordered the confused movers to reload the truck. They left in utter humiliation, forced to search for a local hotel while they reeled from the shocking realization that their entitlement no longer held power over me. Watching their cars disappear down the coastal highway, a profound sense of relief washed over me. I had finally secured my hard-earned peace and reclaimed my sanctuary. Now, I am deeply curious about your thoughts on how this family showdown turned out. Do you think I went completely too far by threatening to call the sheriff on my own flesh and blood, or did my parents finally get the exact lesson and respect that they deserved? In your opinion, make sure to click on one of the 2 video favorites appearing on the final screen right now.